He told the board I was just a floor manager. I had been buying shares for 23 years and owned more of the company than his mother did. He had no idea. The conference room smelled like old coffee and new carpet. Oak Ridge Precision Alloys had spent $60,000 renovating this room, 8 months ago. New carpet, new leather chairs, frosted glass panels on the doors. The 25-foot mahogany table stayed. You do not replace mahogany. Julian Croft stood at the head of it, gesturing at a projected slide that read Lean Operational Footprint Phase 1, in letters large enough to read from the parking lot. His MacBook Pro was open in front of him. He had not closed it once. His eyes kept drifting down to it mid-sentence, like he was reading cue cards for his own authority. 8 people sat around that table. None of them looked comfortable. A few shifted in their chairs. One kept clicking a pen cap, then stopping, then clicking it again. Behind Julian, a young woman named Clara Bell, 27, stood holding a tablet against her chest like a shield. She stared at the carpet. I sat at the far end of the table, quiet, hands folded. "Richard," Julian said, and he did not look up from the MacBook when he said it. "Effective today, your role is being restructured. We are transitioning you from Vice President of Manufacturing Operations to Shift Supervisor. Your compensation will be adjusted accordingly. A 40% reduction to align with the scope of the new position. $350,000 a year to $210,000. A $140,000 cut. Just like that, read off a screen like a weather forecast." He adjusted his tie. It was expensive. His haircut was expensive. His manicured hands had never touched a piece of machinery in this building or any other building. He was 29 years old, and he had given himself the title of Chief Restructuring Officer, and his mother was the board chair. And none of this was complicated to understand. "I understand," I said. Just 2 words. He looked up for the first time just briefly, then back down. He took my calm for surrender. "People usually do. My name is Richard Vance. I am 56 years old. I spent 9 years in the United States Marine Corps as a combat engineer, Staff Sergeant, E6 at discharge, 2 deployments. My specialty was demolitions, structural analysis, and field fortification. I learned 2 things in the Corps that never left me. The first is how to stay calm when something is about to detonate. You do not rush a fuse. You read it, you count, you breathe. The second is how to read a room that does not know it is already lost. I had been at Oak Ridge Precision Alloys for 23 years. Walked in the door at 33 straight off active duty and started on the foundry floor. Same floor I was now ordered to supervise. I came to Oak Ridge because a Marine buddy told me they were hiring, and because the specialty metals industry made sense to a man who had spent 9 years understanding what happens to structures under pressure. I started as a floor worker, poured alloys, ran ladles, learned the furnaces by number, then by sound, then by smell. You can tell when a batch of nickel chromium is off by 0.4% just from the color of the pour if you have watched enough of them. I have watched thousands. Floor worker to floor supervisor in 2 years. Floor supervisor to plant manager in 4. Plant manager to vice president of manufacturing operations 11 years ago. Every promotion earned on output, not optics. Every year the same routine. Do the work, skip the politics, cash the bonus, buy the stock. That last part mattered more than anyone knew. My wife, Helen Vance, died 5 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 18 months from diagnosis to the end. She was a high school chemistry teacher. She was the kind of person who remembered every student's name from every year she ever taught, and they remembered hers. The church was standing room only. I was not there for her last week. There was a rupture in foundry, line 3. A catastrophic seal failure in the primary containment housing. If it had blown fully, we were looking at $42 million in equipment damage and 4 months of lost production. I drove to the plant at 3 in the morning and did not leave for 5 days. I managed the repair sequence personally, oversaw every weld, every pressure test, every recalibration. I saved the line. I saved the production schedule. I saved the company $42 million. Nobody sent flowers. When the bonus came that quarter, I reinvested it. All of it. 5,200 shares at the employee discount rate. Bradley was 18 at the time. My son. He did not understand why his father was not there at the end. Why the nurses said goodbye to his mother without me in the room. He is 23 now. finishing his senior year of mechanical engineering at Ohio State, and he calls me every Sunday, and he is a better man than I probably deserve. I still do not have a good answer for him about that week. I am not sure one exists, but I kept buying the stock. Let me explain how a man ends up owning 58% of a $2,200,000,000 company without anyone on the board noticing. It starts with a pen. Year 1 at Oak Ridge, the founder, Charles Oak Ridge, walked the foundry floor every Friday. He was 78 then, still sharp, still smelled like cigar smoke and machine oil. He would stop at every station, ask a question, listen to the answer, not perform listening, actually listen. He stopped at my station in November of my first year and watched me calibrate a pour sequence I had redesigned to reduce slag waste by 15%. He did not say anything for a full minute. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a pen, silver engraved. It said OPA Year 1, own what you build, son, he told me. Paper without equity is just paper. Charles Oak Ridge died 8 years later. I kept the pen, and I did exactly what he told me to do. It started with the employee stock purchase plan. Oak Ridge offered shares at a 20% discount to employees who reinvested performance bonuses. Most took the cash for trucks or credit cards. I took the stock every quarter for 23 years. It adds up when you are patient. Then came the private purchases. 3 retiring executives held modest blocks of shares. The first was Wallace Drake, a vice president of procurement who retired 16 years ago. I bought his block at a negotiated price. The second was Harvey Miller, director of quality assurance 12 years ago. Same story. The third was Owen Ellis, the outgoing chief financial officer 9 years ago. Owen wanted a clean break, and I gave him one. Every transaction was documented. Every transfer was filed. Every disclosure was submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission on time under the name of the Vance Holdings Trust. The trust was my friend Lawrence Briggs's idea. Lawrence and I served together, same unit, both staff sergeants, both combat engineers. He transitioned to law after discharge, ended up specializing in corporate securities and shareholder rights at a mid-sized firm in Columbus. He is 58 now. He is the only person alive who knows my full ownership position. Lawrence set up the Vance Holdings Trust 22 years ago in my second year at Oak Ridge. He filed the original structure. He tracked every acquisition. He submitted every Securities and Exchange Commission Form 4 and Schedule 13D filing. When my beneficial ownership crossed the 5% threshold, then 10%, then 20%, then 30%, and eventually 40 and 50%, all publicly accessible, all sitting in the Edgar database, all legal, all invisible to anyone who did not bother to look. The last time anyone on the Oak Ridge Board of Directors reviewed the full Securities and Exchange Commission ownership filings was 2015, 11 years ago. By then, I was already past 50%, tile it under the trust. Lawrence told me once early on. You can always assign it later. I never did. Lawrence also made sure I understood Article 7 of the Oak Ridge Corporate Charter, the Emergency Shareholder Governance Clause. He read it to me over black coffee in a Columbus diner 8 years ago and said, "This is your insurance policy, pray you never need it." The language is specific. In the event that any officer of the corporation takes unilateral action affecting the compensation, title, or duties of any employee holding a majority stake in the corporation's issued shares, without prior written consent of said shareholder, that shareholder may invoke Article 7 to convene an emergency board session within 36 hours for the purpose of reviewing said action and its authorization. I owned 58% of Oak Ridge Precision Alloys. Market value approximately $1,276,000,000. And a 29-year-old with a Wharton business degree, a self-appointed title that was never ratified by a full board resolution, and 18 months of slide deck consulting experience had just cut my salary by 40% without asking me, the board, or his mother's own general counsel. I did not slam the conference room door. I did not raise my voice. I did not say a word to anyone on the way out. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, rode it down to the parking garage alone. The fluorescent lights hummed the same way they had hummed for 23 years. The concrete smelled like oil and cold air. I sat in my truck for exactly 3 minutes. Helen's photo was still clipped to the sun visor. She was laughing in it. Bradley was 12, sitting on her lap, squinting into the sun. Then I pulled out my phone and called Lawrence Briggs. He picked up on the second ring. He did not say hello. I have been waiting for this call for about 7 years. Lawrence did not rush. Marines do not rush fuses, and Lawrence does not rush filings. But he does not waste time either. Tell me exactly what happened, he said. I explained the conference room meeting, the slide deck, and the demotion from Vice President of Manufacturing Operations to Shift Supervisor. I described the 40% salary reduction from $350,000 to $210,000 and the 8 people in the room who watched it happen. I mentioned Clara Bell standing behind Julian holding a tablet, and Julian's MacBook open the entire time as he delivered the line like it was just another minor agenda item. Lawrence was quiet for 4 seconds. I could hear him writing. His title, Lawrence said, Chief Restructuring Officer. Was it ratified by a full board resolution? No, you are certain? I have read every board resolution for the last 11 years. Lawrence. There is no vote authorizing that title. His mother created the position and installed him. 3 directors objected. She overrode them. And he took unilateral action affecting your compensation, title, and duties without your prior written consent. He did. Then Article 7 is live. I heard his chair creak, the sound of a desk drawer opening, a pen clicking. I will have the filing ready by 6:30, he said. Emergency shareholder action under Article 7 of the Oak Ridge Corporate Charter, submitted on behalf of the Vance Holdings Trust, beneficial owner of 58% of issued shares. The board will be required to convene within 36 hours. That puts us at Thursday morning. Thursday at 10 in the morning if they move fast. And they will move fast once George Mercer sees what is in the Edgar database. I looked at Helen's photo on the sun visor. Do it, I said. Already started, he replied. Click. It was 4:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Here is what I did not do in the next 18 hours. I did not call Julian. I did not call Eleanor Croft. I did not call anyone at Oak Ridge. I did not send an email. I did not post anything. I did not update my professional profile. I did not walk back into that building and tell anyone what was coming. I drove home. I fed Rex. He is a yellow lab, 11 years old. And he knew something had shifted the moment I walked through the door. Dogs know. He did not bring me his ball. He just sat next to my chair and put his chin on my knee. I poured 3 fingers of bourbon, not the daily drinker, the good stuff. Blandon's from the bottle Helen gave me the Christmas before she got sick. I had been saving it for something. I was not sure what. Turns out it was this. I sat on the back deck and watched the sky go dark over the Foundry District. You could see the Oak Ridge smokestacks from my house. I had picked the house for that reason 19 years ago. Helen thought I was crazy. You want to stare at work from your porch, she said. I told her I wanted to see what I was building. She laughed and signed the mortgage papers. I could see the lights in the executive suite from where I sat. 3rd floor, corner office, the one that used to be mine before Julian moved into it 7 months ago. The lights were still on. Good, let him enjoy it. At 6:30 in the evening, Lawrence texted me 2 words, filed. Clock is running. I finished the bourbon, went inside, washed the glass, set it on the drying rack next to the single plate and single fork from dinner. Then I went to bed. I slept 7 hours straight. First time in months. While I slept, here is what happened. Lawrence's filing landed in the Oak Ridge corporate secretary's inbox at 6:32 in the evening. The corporate secretary, a meticulous woman named Martha Higgins, 59, who had held that role for 12 years, opened it at 7:15 while eating leftover soup at her desk. She read the first paragraph twice. Then she picked up her phone and called George Mercer, the general counsel. George did not answer. He was at dinner with his wife. Martha left a voicemail. The voicemail said, George, we have received an Article 7 filing, emergency shareholder action. You need to call me tonight. George listened to it at 9:40 in the evening and called Martha back. Who filed it? He asked. The Vance Holdings Trust, she said, on behalf of Richard Vance. The filing claims beneficial ownership of 58%. George Mercer had been general counsel for 9 years. He was 64, competent, and deeply uncomfortable with what Julian had done. George had not been consulted. Julian had demoted a 23-year officer of the corporation without legal review, board authorization, or checking who owned the company he was pretending to run, George sat down at his home office desk at 10:15. In the Edgar database, he typed Oak Ridge Precision Alloys. The filings loaded. He started with the most recent Schedule 13D amendment. Beneficial owner, Vance Holdings Trust, 58%. He scrolled backward through years of form. 4 filings tracking every acquisition, including share transfers from Wallace Drake, Harvey Miller, and Owen Ellis, and quarterly purchases through the stock plan. Every single one was documented, time-stamped, and filed on schedule. He printed all 52 pages. George told me later his hands started shaking at page 10. By page 25, he had loosened his tie. By page 40, he had poured himself a glass of whiskey. By page 52, he was sitting very still, staring at the wall. The filing was immaculate. Lawrence Briggs does not make mistakes. He builds paper trails like fortifications, with every document cross-referenced and load-bearing. George picked up his phone. It was 11:15 at night on a Tuesday. He did not call Julian. He called Eleanor Croft. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was careful, the way it always was. Controlled. George, it is late. Eleanor, I need you at headquarters first thing tomorrow morning. Your son signed something he should not have. What do you mean? Richard Vance owns 58% of this company. He has for years. It is in the Securities and Exchange Commission filings. Every filing since his 2nd year of employment. And your son just demoted him without board authorization, without legal review, and without the prior written consent of the majority shareholder. Silence. 5 full seconds. That is not possible. I am looking at 52 pages of evidence that says it is. George, that man is a floor manager. He has been a shareholder for 23 years, Eleanor. He owns more of this company than every board member combined, including you. Another silence, longer this time. Article 7 has been invoked, George continued. We are legally required to convene the board within 36 hours. That puts us at Thursday morning, 10 in the morning. I need every director notified by 8 in the morning tomorrow. Eleanor, I also need to inform you that your son's title, Chief Restructuring Officer, was never ratified by a full board resolution, which means his authority to restructure anyone's compensation is legally questionable on its face, independent of the ownership issue. I am told Eleanor did not speak for nearly 10 seconds after that. When she did, her voice was different, quieter. The control was still there, but something underneath it had cracked. Does Julian know? No. Do not tell him. I will handle it. But she did not handle it. Not that night. Because while Eleanor Croft sat in her bedroom processing the fact that she had helped her son kick a hornet's nest the size of a $1,276,000,000 trust fund, Julian was on social media. His post at 11:47 at night showed a glass of champagne on his desk, the desk that used to be mine. The caption read, Day 1 of the new era. First move made. He had no idea the board had already been convened. I woke up Wednesday morning at 5:30, made black coffee, fed Rex, stood on the back deck in the early dark, and watched the Oak Ridge smokestacks against the gray sky. My phone was on the kitchen table. I had not looked at it since Lawrence's text. When I finally picked it up at 6:50 in the morning, I had 16 missed calls. 3 from numbers I did not recognize, 3 from George Mercer's office line, 5 from George's cell phone, 2 from Eleanor Croft directly, and 3 from Julian Croft. I did not return a single one. Instead, I poured a second cup of coffee, sat down in the kitchen chair, and opened a text from Brenda Joyce. It had come in at 6:15 in the morning. Richard, something is happening. George Mercer arrived at 6:30 in the morning. Eleanor Croft pulled in right behind him. Julian is not here yet. Nobody will tell us anything, but the executive floor is locked down. Conference room A is being set up for a full board session. I typed back 3 words. Thanks, Brenda. The wheels were turning Thursday morning, October 17th, 9:20 in the morning. I put on the charcoal suit Helen picked out for me 10 years ago. She said it made me look like I owned something. I adjusted the tie in the bathroom mirror, navy blue, simple knot. I slipped Charles Oak Ridge's pen into my inside breast pocket. The engraving caught the light. OPA Year 1. I drove to Oak Ridge and parked in the main lot, not the executive garage, the main lot where the floor workers park. I had been parking there for 23 years. The building looked the same as it always did. Limestone and glass. The smokestacks running behind it, the Oak Ridge Precision Alloys logo etched into the stone above the main entrance. Same font Charles approved in 1973. I walked through the front door at 9:40 in the morning. The security guard, Jerry Fowler, 63 years old, who had been working that desk for 17 years, looked up from his monitor and did something he had never done before. He stood up. "Mr. Vance, morning, Jerry." He did not say anything else, but he nodded. The kind of nod that carries weight. Lawrence was already in the third-floor corridor outside the main boardroom. Navy suit, black briefcase. The briefcase was the same one he had carried through law school. Scuffed leather, brass clasps. He looked at me. I looked at him. "You ready?" he asked. "I have been ready for 7 years, then let's go own a boardroom." The doors to Conference Room A were frosted glass and mahogany. The same room I had been demoted in 48 hours earlier. Same 25-foot table, same leather chairs, same carpet that cost $60,000 8 months ago. But today the room was different. Today there were nameplates at every seat. 9 directors were already seated, every chair occupied. George Mercer sat at the far left, a stack of documents in front of him thick enough to stop a bullet. Martha Higgins sat behind him with a legal pad. Eleanor Croft sat at the head of the table in her usual position as board chair, her hands flat on the surface, her face perfectly composed and perfectly gray. And at the opposite end of the table from Eleanor, there was one empty chair. In front of it, a nameplate. It read Vance Holdings Trust Majority Shareholder. I sat down, placed Charles Oakridge's pen on the table in front of me, folded my hands. The clock on the wall read 9:58 in the morning. At 9:59, the door opened and Julian Croft walked in. He was wearing a slim-cut navy suit. His tie was silk. His haircut was fresh. His MacBook Pro was tucked under his arm. He walked in with the stride of a man who believed he was early to a meeting he controlled. He saw the nameplates. He saw the 9 directors. He saw George Mercer's document stack. He saw Lawrence Briggs sitting quietly with his scuffed briefcase. He saw me sitting at the end of the table in the chair with his mother's nameplate at the opposite end. He looked at Eleanor. "Mom, what is this?" Eleanor did not look at him. "Sit down, Julian." He did not sit. He adjusted his tie. "I was not informed of a board session. If this is about the restructuring rollout, I have the Phase 2 deck ready." "Sit down." He sat. George Mercer stood. "This emergency session has been convened pursuant to Article 7 of the Oak Ridge Precision Alloys Corporate Charter," George said. The filing was submitted Tuesday evening at 6:32 by the Vance Holdings Trust on behalf of its sole beneficiary, Richard Vance. The filing asserts that an officer of the corporation took unilateral action affecting the compensation, title, and duties of an employee holding a majority stake in the corporation's issued shares without prior written consent of said shareholder. Julian opened his MacBook. "Close the laptop, Julian," Eleanor said. Her voice was flat. He closed it slowly. George continued. "The Vance Holdings Trust holds 58% of Oak Ridge Precision Alloys issued shares. This position has been documented in continuous filings, including Form 4 and Schedule 13D amendments for 22 years. Every filing is publicly accessible through the Edgar database. Every acquisition, including share purchases from 3 retiring executives, quarterly reinvestment through the Employee Stock Purchase Plan, and private transfers, was properly disclosed and documented." George picked up the top sheet from his stack and held it where the room could see it. At the current company valuation of $2,200,000,000, Mr. Vance's 58% stake represents approximately $1,276,000,000 in market value. One of the directors, Stuart Hargrove, leaned back in his chair and exhaled through his nose. The director next to him, Evelyn Barlow, closed her eyes briefly. Julian looked at me. For the first time since I had known him, he was not performing. "That is not—" He stopped, started again. "Those filings cannot be." "They are bulletproof," Lawrence said from behind me. His voice was calm and level. "Every threshold properly reported, every transfer legally executed, every disclosure filed on schedule. 22 years of immaculate documentation. I built this structure myself." Julian looked at Eleanor. "Mom." Eleanor's eyes were on the table. She did not look up. George set the paper down. "Additionally, The title of Chief Restructuring Officer, under which Mr. Croft took the action in question, was never ratified by a full board resolution. It was created by executive memo and installed without a formal vote. 3 directors objected at the time and were overridden, which means, George said, that Mr. Croft's authority to restructure the compensation of any officer of this corporation is legally questionable on its face, independent of the ownership issue. This is a clerical issue, Julian said, his voice rising, a filing discrepancy. We can resolve this with a governance review. Julian, Eleanor's voice was quiet. Stop talking. He stopped. George looked around the table. A motion is before the board to reverse all restructuring actions taken by Julian Croft under the unratified title of Chief Restructuring Officer, to reinstate Richard Vance with all back pay, and to remove Mr. Croft from his position effective immediately. The motion has been submitted by the majority shareholder. I will call the vote. He went around the table. One by one, every director stated their vote out loud. Director Hargrove, aye. Director Barlow, aye. Director Sanders, aye. Director Hardy, aye. Director Patterson, aye. Director Flynn, aye. Director Garrison, aye. Director Collier, aye. George paused, looked at Eleanor, Chair Croft. Eleanor lifted her head. She looked at her son. He was staring at her with an expression of shock. Aye, Eleanor said. 9-0. Unanimous. The room was silent. George spoke. The motion carries. Mr. Croft, your position is terminated. Security will escort you out. Julian stood up, his chair hitting the credenza behind him. He looked at me. You sat there on Tuesday and said you understand, he said. I did understand, I replied. Better than you. He stood frozen, mouth open. Jerry Fowler walked in with another guard, his face blank. Julian looked at his mother once more, but she kept her eyes on the table. Julian walked out, escorted by security, and the glass doors clicked shut. The board appointed me interim chief executive officer, restoring my compensation to $350,000 and restructuring it upward. Within 30 days, they approved a $50 million special dividend. My 58% stake entitled me to $29 million deposited into the Vance Holdings Trust. Within 60 days, minority shareholders filed a $65 million lawsuit against Julian Croft personally, alleging unauthorized restructuring actions that exposed the company to severe governance risks. Eleanor Croft resigned a week later. She signed the letter, handed it to Martha Higgins, and walked out. Her 3.8% stake remains, but she is gone. Julie's social media post of the champagne on my desk is now in the legal record. His first move was his last. Brenda Joyce was promoted to Director of Floor Operations. She earned it 15 years ago. When I told her, she stood in my office doorway and said, "About damn time," I agreed. I kept the corner office. I put Helen's photo on the desk. I put Charles Oakridge's pen in the top drawer, and I put a new nameplate on the door. It says Chief Executive Officer, but that is not the one that matters. The one that matters is the small brass plate on my desk that says Vance Sunday. After the board vote, Bradley called. Right on schedule, every Sunday, like clockwork. The kid is reliable, gets it from his mother. Dad, you sound different, he said. Less like you are waiting for something. I leaned back in the chair on the back deck. Rex was lying at my feet. The Oakridge smokestacks were visible against the evening sky, same as always. The lights in the executive suite were on. My lights now. Maybe I am not, I said. Are you going to come to the game next Saturday? We have a scrimmage. Engineering League softball. It is terrible. You would love it. I will be there, I said. Really, he asked. Really, I replied. He was quiet for a second. Good. That is really good, Dad. I hung up, sat there for a while. Rex shifted his weight against my ankle. The bourbon was on the side table, 3 fingers. Not the daily drinker, the Blandons, Helen's bottle. There was still enough for a few more evenings like this one. I took a sip and watched the sky go dark over the Foundry District. The same view I had been looking at for 19 years, the same smokestacks, the same work, the same quiet. Julian Croft told the boardroom I was just a floor manager. He was right about one thing. I know every floor in that building. I know every furnace by number, by sound, by smell. I know every pour sequence, every pressure threshold. Every man and woman who walks through those doors at 6 in the morning and builds something real with their hands. He just did not know I also owned the building. Sometimes power does not announce itself. It does not post champagne on social media or name-drop business schools in every meeting or give itself a title nobody voted on. Sometimes it just shows up every quarter, every year, half a point here, a full point there. For 23 years, patient, quiet, documented, and when the fuse finally reaches the charge, it does not make a sound until everything is already changed. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you have not subscribed yet, subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching.